Do you ever struggle with making good photos on a rainy or grey day? I definitely do, but there are simple ideas and techniques I've learnt along the way which have helped me make engaging work in dull flat light. And in today's video I'll be taking you through how I approach street photography on a grey day. Firstly, it really helps to be somewhere interesting, and today I'm in Rotterdam, which is a modern city in the Netherlands. Fun for street photography but also pretty quiet, so I had to use my creativity to come up with some decent images. I started off from the train station and noticed these RIP posters. I've made photographs like this before in other cities around the world, and I really like the abstract nature of this sort of accidental abstract art. Not exactly street photography, but a good start to the walk, getting my eye in and focusing on some abstract shapes. Recently in my street photography I've been fascinated by human behaviour, but I'm also really interested in the environment we make for ourselves, and that can lead to some intriguing images as well. I'm a firm believer that you don't need to stick to one style of photography. Just go out and photograph whatever you find interesting, and your style will come naturally later. When it's a grey and wet day, the location you're in really helps in order to have a good chance for some strong photos. I did a bit of research and I knew I could get some simple minimalist shots on this yellow wooden walkway, so I headed there to see what I could find. It was very quiet, but patience always pays off, and I took a more fishing approach in this location, waiting for people to come past that I could use to highlight the scale, texture and colour of the environment. One good thing about when it's raining is people tend to use umbrellas, which, while that can definitely make for a bit of a cliche, they also make really good, often colourful, graphic elements that can anchor an image, especially if you're going for a more minimalist look. The next thing I've learnt along the way, back from when I was regularly doing landscape photography, when it's grey and wet out, is to shoot to the conditions. So what do I mean by that? Well, you might love close-up street photography of life with really layered scenes, or you might prefer minimalist images with shafts of light framing a subject and highlighting the environment. But if you don't have the conditions to make that kind of work in, what are you going to do? Sit at home and do nothing? I prefer not to do that, to be honest. I want to be out making street photographs. So if you live somewhere that's grey and rains a lot like I do, you have to make the most of those grey days and just adjust what you look for and also adjust your expectations. You can still make great work on a rainy day, you just have to work a little bit harder. When your surroundings are quiet and boring on a grey, dull day, then when you do find a location with potential, you really have to work it. For example, here I found this sculpture of a car looking as if it's driving off the edge of a building. It's a very simple image or very simple scene and doesn't require much technical skill, but patience was very important to make sure I got the right subject walking past at the right time. If I didn't have patience, I might have settled for just something that sort of worked and then moved on, and it wouldn't have really have made such a strong image. No one's going to actually believe this is an actual car driving off the roof of a building, but it might make the viewer double take and it's a little bit humorous, so it was really worth working the scene for the right photo. If where you live is dull and boring, consider trying a new location for a bit, as often that can really spark inspiration. When you do find an area that has potential for some shots, then it always pays to spend some time exploring that area, seeing if there's something you can make out of it, and if not, bookmark it to return to when the conditions change. Following on with the sculpture theme, although the light was flat, I headed down onto the Riverside to see if I could capture anyone interacting with the sculptures on Rotterdam's sculpture trail. Immediately though, I was attracted to the reflections in the water from the buildings across the road. There were these lovely textures and shapes and colours, and I knew it would make for some cool abstract images. Not street photography per se, but a really fun experiment and going back to my landscape photography beginnings, shooting to the conditions. I changed to a longer lens for this bit and made a few abstract shots of the river that I really like. If you're in a place like the Netherlands, it would be rude not to incorporate the water into your photo somehow. Still with the long lens on, which I haven't used in months and months, I saw this family interacting with one of the sculptures and I thought it made for an image that says a little something about humanity, albeit in a more abstract way. I think on a rainy or grey day, your focal length choice is really important. The wider you shoot, the closer you need to get to your subject, so you might want to shoot on a longer focal length, meaning that you can stand a bit further away, you can isolate people, but it really kind of depends on what effect you want to go for and what you're interested in creating in your own work. I know these reflection photos won't be to everyone's taste, and some would say they're definitely not street photography, but I honestly don't care what other people think of my photography process and what interests me, and you definitely shouldn't either. Like I said earlier, especially if you're a beginner, just go out and shoot for fun. Photograph anything that piques your interest in all conditions, and then over time you'll work out a style and a body of work you'll be really happy with. If the streets around you are really quiet, then it sounds obvious, but try to go to the most busy area you can think of, as more people equals more opportunities for street photos. I headed to the famous Rotterdam Square houses as I knew they would make a good backdrop for photos, but also there would be a high chance to have a high concentration of people there. I really like what these guys were doing, which was a bit unusual, playing a game with these sort of flippy toys. I don't really know what they are, but that made for a nice photo. While I don't think you can actively tell a story with your photos, you can look for moments that a viewer might find engaging and portray their own story onto, which can often make for the most successful photos. When it's grey and wet, there might be fewer people around, but there are still stories and moments of interesting human behaviour to be found that make for those lovely little story-driven moments. You can also take a more documentary approach on a dull grey day, where you look for details as well as wider shots. Think like a movie. If you focus on capturing, say, 5 to 10 photos, some close in focusing on some details, some wider to show the environment, and then some moments, you can then make a little story from the day yourself. You can build a narrative through multiple shots that might not be remarkable on their own, but when viewed together make a lovely story of the day. You can then use this for posting a carousel on social media or making short form videos like Reels or YouTube Shorts. Again, back to the sculpture theme, they really like sculptures in Rotterdam, which is actually great, I think, because they always make for fun objects that you might see people interact with or do interesting things around. Rotterdam was completely levelled in the Second World War, so everything is new and modern with striking architecture, and actually I'd love to go back on a busy sunny day. I think it would be a really great place for some modern minimalist photography. And that's exactly like I touched on earlier, if it's not working for you now, take a note of it, especially if it's obviously somewhere that's close to you, and then you can always return there when the conditions do work. You've done a bit of research and you've got outside and explored a new area. And lastly, if the light is flat and grey, then you need to look for ways you can find scenes with contrast. And a great way to do this is to look for things like food stalls, shop windows, anything that has an artificial light source, and that can often make for more contrast and make a more punchy photo. Also, looking for characters behind windows is a great way to add contrast and have a well lit scene, as you don't need to worry about what the light conditions are outside for that. And actually, this shot of this person in a gallery is probably my favourite of the day. I love the colourful modern shapes in the window and the way the lady in black is in contrast to the white gallery space, making for a lovely anchor to this minimalist stripped back image. For some sunny day street photography in complete contrast to this video, then check this one out next. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.